The salt wind carried the sound of children laughing across the weathered dock. Two small figures ran toward the water, their matching amber eyes catching the afternoon light. And the man standing frozen at the marina railing forgot how to breathe. His hand gripped the metal so hard it cut into his palm. His legs threatened to buckle beneath him. Because those boys, those two small humans chasing each other through puddles with the careless joy of childhood, they had his eyes. His grandmother's tiger eyes. The distinctive amber gold that his family had carried for generations. They were his. And he had never seen them before in his life. Then she appeared from the marine research building at the harbor's edge. Thinner than he remembered. Harder. Carrying angles in her face that survival had carved there. She looked up, scanned the marina with the vigilance of someone who had learned to watch for threats. Their eyes met across the distance. The color drained from her face. She moved immediately, placing her body between the children and his line of sight. Protecting them. From him. From their own father. Welcome back to another powerful story, my beloved listeners. Kindly tell me where you are watching from and what time it is where you are at. If you are new here, prepare for a story of betrayal, unexpected love, and what truly makes a family. Drop everything and listen closely. This tale of heartbreak and redemption might just change how you view love and family forever. The marina sat at the edge of a small coastal town that had never appeared in any of his business itineraries, any of his travel plans, any version of the life he thought he was living. He had come here following an address his private investigator had finally uncovered after 18 months of searching. 18 months of dead ends and sealed records, and the growing certainty that everything he believed about his own life was built on deliberate deception. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Nothing had prepared him for two boys who looked exactly like him running toward a bait shop at the end of the dock. Nothing had prepared him for her emerging from that building, wearing faded overalls stained with salt water and something that looked like paint, her hair pulled back in a messy knot that exposed the elegant line of her neck. She was the most devastating thing he had ever seen. Because she was right there. Close enough that he could close the distance in 30 seconds. Close enough that he could finally explain that he did not know, that he did not choose this, that he did not abandon her the way she thought he did. And she was looking at him like he was a threat to be neutralized. She gathered the boys quickly, speaking to them in low tones he could not hear from this distance. The taller one, the one with a more serious expression, looked toward the marina railing where he stood. The smaller one waved in that automatic way children wave at strangers, friendly and unguarded. She stopped the wave, took his hand, turned them both away, and walked toward a parking lot without looking back. He watched his family disappear into a rusted pickup truck. Watched the vehicle pull out of the marina and turn onto the coastal road. Watched until the truck became a speck in the distance and then vanished entirely. He had found them. And he had never been more lost. The story of how they arrived at this moment began 5 years earlier, in a world that felt like it belonged to different people entirely. He had been the heir to a corporate empire built on real estate and development, the kind of fortune that appeared in magazine articles and generated invitations to events where everyone knew everyone else's net worth before they knew their names. His parents had raised him to understand that legacy meant more than happiness, that family meant more than love, that the continuation of what they had built superseded any individual desire he might have for a different kind of life. Then he met her at a marine conservation fundraiser his company was sponsoring. She was a marine biologist with an artistic gift that had earned her a growing reputation for scientific illustrations that appeared in journals academics actually respected. She could translate the complexity of underwater ecosystems into images that made people understand why they should care about creatures they would never see. She was brilliant and talented and completely unimpressed by his family name. That last part drew him in more than anything else. Their first conversation lasted 3 hours. He had been supposed to give a speech, shake hands with donors, perform the role his parents had scripted for him. Instead, he stood in a corner with a woman who told him about the intelligence of octopi and the social structures of dolphins and the way certain species of coral could live for thousands of years if humans would just stop poisoning the water. He asked for her number. She said no. He asked again the next week when he showed up at the marine sanctuary where she worked, carrying coffee and an apology for being too persistent. She laughed. Said that the apology was noted but the coffee was appreciated. Their courtship moved quickly after that. He was used to women who saw his wealth first and him second. She seemed to see his wealth as an inconvenience, something that got in the way of having normal conversations in normal places without photographers appearing to document what the heir to the empire was doing with his free time. They got married in a small ceremony that his parents attended with barely concealed disapproval. His mother had been polished and precise throughout the event, the kind of woman who smiled with her mouth while calculating destruction with her eyes. She had looked at her new daughter-in-law the way someone examines a stain on expensive fabric, with distant disgust and the certainty that removal was simply a matter of applying the right solution. The first year of marriage had been happy despite the external pressure. They lived in a modest apartment rather than the penthouse his parents offered. She continued her work at the marine sanctuary while building her illustration business. He continued running the divisions of the company his father had assigned to him while dreaming about a life where he could make his own choices. But his parents were patient. His parents knew how to wait for the right moment. That moment came when his father's health began declining and the company began struggling with a series of failed investments. Suddenly, family dinners became strategy sessions. Phone calls at midnight became demands for his presence at emergency meetings. The message was clear without ever being stated directly. The empire was in crisis, and he needed to choose where his loyalties belonged. His mother began the campaign of separation with surgical precision. First came the comments about his wife's career being impractical, about scientific illustration being a hobby rather than a profession, about the way she dressed and spoke and held herself in settings that required polish rather than authenticity. Then came the scheduling conflicts. Events he was required to attend that happened to conflict with his wife's important moments. Trips he needed to take for business that lasted longer than planned. The slow erosion of shared time that creates distance between people who love each other. Finally came the ultimatum. His father had called him into the study of the family estate on an evening when autumn leaves covered the ground and the light through the windows painted everything gold. The old man looked tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. The weight of empire visible in every line of his face. "Son, I need to know if I can count on you." "Of course you can count on me." "Then you need to make a choice. This family, this company, everything your grandfather built and I have maintained, it needs your full attention. It needs you present and focused and committed. And I have watched that woman distract you from what matters." He had felt his throat close around the words he should have spoken. The defense he should have mounted. The declaration that his wife was not a distraction but a priority. Instead, he stayed silent. "Your mother believes the marriage was a mistake. I have come to agree with her. We would like you to consider ending it cleanly, before children or other complications make the situation more difficult." The word cleanly had stayed with him for years afterward. The casual cruelty of treating a marriage like a business arrangement that could be dissolved without emotional consequence. He should have refused. He should have walked out of that study and never looked back. He should have chosen love over legacy and trusted that everything else would work itself out. But he was his parents' son in ways he did not fully understand until it was too late. He had been raised to believe that family obligation superseded individual desire. He had been trained to see his own happiness as selfish when measured against the needs of the empire. He had been shaped into someone who could not imagine defying his parents even when defiance was the only moral choice. So he agreed to consider their suggestion. And his mother took that agreement and ran with it. The divorce papers appeared 3 weeks later, delivered by lawyers he had never met in a conference room designed to intimidate. His wife sat across the table looking stunned and confused and heartbroken in equal measure. "Where is he?" she asked the lawyer. "Why is he not here? Mr. Reeves has asked us to handle these proceedings on his behalf. He believes this is best for everyone involved." She had looked around the room as if expecting him to appear from behind a door, to reveal this as some terrible joke, to explain what was happening in a way that made sense. He did not appear. Because his mother had told him his wife wanted the divorce. Had shown him text messages she claimed were from her phone, expressing relief that the marriage was ending, discussing settlement amounts with an eagerness that suggested money mattered more than love. Had convinced him that the woman he married was someone entirely different from who he thought she was. 2 sets of lies, told to 2 people who loved each other, designed to ensure they never spoke directly about what was happening. The settlement terms included non-compete clauses she did not fully understand until it was too late. Provisions that prevented her from contacting any of her established clients in the scientific illustration field. Conditions that effectively destroyed her career while appearing, on paper, to be standard legal language. His mother had forged his approval signatures on documents that made his wife believe he knew about and authorized her professional destruction. had created emails in his name instructing lawyers to ensure she never contacted the family again, had manufactured evidence of his involvement so convincing that any reasonable person would believe he had orchestrated the entire thing. She signed the papers because she was drowning and had no one to save her. She did not know she was pregnant. That discovery came 3 weeks later, in the bathroom of an extended-stay motel where she was living on what remained of her savings after paying lawyers to review settlement terms she should never have agreed to. The pregnancy test showed 2 lines in that dingy bathroom light. And she sat on the tile floor for an hour, unable to move, unable to cry, unable to do anything except stare at those lines and understand that her entire future had just shattered and reformed into something unrecognizable. Her sister drove 4 hours to pick her up. Her mother rearranged her entire life to help. And she moved into her sister's basement, sleeping on a mattress on a concrete floor, her belongings in boxes she did not bother to unpack because unpacking meant accepting permanence, and she was not ready to accept that any of this was really happening. The ultrasound revealed twins. 2 heartbeats on the screen. 2 lives growing inside her. 2 reasons to survive what felt unsurvivable. She remembers laughing and crying simultaneously when the technician confirmed what she was seeing. Of course it would be twins. Of course her body would make an already impossible situation twice as complicated, twice as overwhelming, twice as much to carry alone. The nurse during that ultrasound asked about the father. Asked if there was someone she could call, someone who should be there for this moment. She opened her mouth to answer and found herself crying so hard the examination had to stop. The nurse brought tissues and water and asked careful questions about whether she was safe, whether someone was hurting her, whether she needed resources beyond medical care. She assured the nurse she was safe. That no one was hurting her physically. That she just needed a moment to process the reality of growing 2 humans entirely alone. But the truth was more complicated than that. She was safe from physical harm. But she was not safe from the knowledge that somewhere in the world, the man she had loved completely had chosen money and family legacy over their marriage. Had signed papers without even having a conversation with her. Had authorized her professional destruction while she was pregnant with his children. That knowledge felt like violence even without bruises. She got a job as a night custodian at a medical office building. Midnight to dawn, scrubbing toilets and mopping floors and emptying trash bins while her mother watched over her increasingly uncomfortable sleep during the day. The irony was not lost on her. She used to illustrate surgical procedures for prestigious textbooks. Now she was cleaning the offices where doctors worked. But during those long midnight hours alone in empty hallways, with only the hum of fluorescent lights for company, she started sketching again. She found discarded printer paper in recycling bins and drew on the blank sides. Her right hand had developed a tremor from the stress, making detailed work impossible. So she taught herself to work with her left hand, stroke by painful stroke, rebuilding a skill from its foundation up. The drawings were clumsy at first. Her control shot from pregnancy hormones and stress and the unfamiliar mechanics of using her non-dominant hand. But slowly, painfully, she improved. The left-handed style that emerged was different from her old work. More fluid and expressive. Less technical precision and more emotional resonance. Her mother moved into the basement with her when the pregnancy reached its final months. Sleeping on the couch so she could help with night feedings, so the babies would never be alone even when exhaustion overwhelmed their mother. The twins were born on a morning when snow fell outside the hospital windows. Her mother held her left hand. Her sister held her right. And she pushed through pain that rewrote her understanding of what a body could endure. They placed the first baby on her chest. He was tiny and perfect and screaming with healthy lungs. Fierce in a way that seemed to announce his intention to fight for his place in the world. She fell in love so completely that she forgot how to breathe. Then they placed the second baby. And she understood that her capacity for love was infinite. That these 2 humans she had grown from nothing were the reason she had survived. That everything before this moment had been preparing her to become the mother they deserved. The nurse asked for the father's name for the birth certificates. She spoke it aloud one final time. Made it real. Acknowledged that he existed and these were his sons whether he knew it or not. Then she told them to leave the father's line blank. She named them for the ocean. For the thing that had saved her when everything else failed. Names that sounded like water and waves and the endless horizon that promised there was always more world beyond the one you could see. Recovery was brutal. Her body had been through trauma, and she was alone at night with 2 newborns who woke on different schedules, who needed feeding and changing and comfort while she was still bleeding and exhausted and healing from tears that made sitting agony. But she did it. Night after night. Feeding after feeding. One sleepless morning after another. She started a blog during those endless nights when sleep would not come. Simple illustrations of common childhood medical conditions, paired with explanations that parents could actually understand. Diaper rash. Cradle cap. Normal newborn development versus warning signs that required attention. The blog found an audience slowly. Other mothers discovering her through late-night searches. Pediatricians recommending her work because her illustrations made complex concepts accessible. Small publishers started reaching out when the twins turned one. Independent presses that did not know about the lawsuit, that just wanted her talent regardless of her history. She took every project offered, working during naps and after bedtime, rebuilding her portfolio piece by careful piece. By the time the twins were 3, she was making enough to move out of her sister's basement into a small rental house near the coast. The marine sanctuary there offered a volunteer position that gave her purpose beyond just surviving. By the time they were 4, she had steady freelance income and a growing reputation in pediatric medical illustration specifically. Her left-handed style had become distinctive enough that clients sought her out rather than her seeking them. By the time they were 5, she was supporting them comfortably if not luxuriously. Had clients who knew her work and trusted her vision. Had rebuilt everything his family destroyed into something entirely her own. The twins knew nothing about their father because she built a world where his absence did not leave holes. They had her mother, who visited every week and spoiled them shamelessly. They had her sister, who taught them to ride bikes and let them stay up late watching movies when they visited. They had birthday parties and playground friends and bedtime stories. They had a life that felt complete because she made it complete through sheer force of will. She never dated because she could not imagine trusting anyone enough to let them near her sons. Could not risk them getting attached to someone who might leave. Poured everything into being enough for them, into making their childhood happy despite starting from nothing. Sometimes, late at night after the boys were asleep, she would look at photos from her wedding and try to reconcile the man who had promised forever with the man who signed divorce papers without explanation. She kept the photos in a box under her bed. Not for nostalgia, but as evidence that she had not imagined it. That the love had been real, even if the ending proved it was not strong enough to survive his parents' manipulation. She never spoke his name aloud after the hospital. Told herself it was protection for the twins. That not knowing about him meant not feeling his absence. But truthfully, it was protection for herself. Because saying his name made her feel like she was breaking again. And she had worked too hard to rebuild herself to risk shattering over someone who had chosen to be gone. Now he was standing in a marina parking lot, watching the space where her truck had been. The ghost had become real. And nothing would ever be the same. While she was building a new life from ruins, he was living inside a lie without knowing it. His existence after the divorce had been exactly what his parents designed it to be. Dedicated to the company. Focused on legacy. Successful in every metric that could be measured on spreadsheets or displayed in business magazines. He had become the heir his parents always wanted. And he had never been more miserable. The penthouse apartment he lived in cost more per month than most people earned in a year. It was decorated by professionals in shades of grey and steel that felt like a museum rather than a home. He walked through rooms that were meant to impress visitors and felt nothing resembling connection to any of it. He tried dating, twice. Professional women his mother approved of who came from families his parents recognized from charity galas and country club memberships. Neither relationship lasted more than a few months. Because every woman he met was compared to her, and every comparison found the new candidate lacking. Not because they were insufficient, but because they were not her. They did not see through his wealth to the person beneath it. They did not challenge him or laugh at him or make him feel like he could be someone other than the heir to an empire. He told himself he was over her. Told himself the marriage had been a mistake his parents correctly identified. Told himself he was grateful for their intervention. But at 3 a.m, when sleep would not come and the city lights spread beneath his windows like a galaxy of strangers, he knew the truth. He had let them destroy the best thing that ever happened to him. And he had no idea how to fix something that felt irreparably broken. His father's stroke came without warning. One moment the old man was presiding over a board meeting, the same commanding presence he had always been. The next moment he was on the floor, half his body no longer responding to commands, his voice reduced to sounds that could not form words. The doctors said the stroke was severe, that recovery would be limited, that the powerful man who had controlled a corporate empire would now require assistance with basic functions for the rest of his life. His mother handled the transition with the same efficiency she applied to everything. Hired the best caregivers. Arranged the most comfortable accommodations. Ensured the public face of the family remained composed and dignified while privately dealing with the chaos of sudden incapacity. But his father was not completely gone. The stroke had stolen his speech and half his movement, but his mind remained sharp enough to understand consequences. Sharp enough to feel guilt for things he had participated in. Sharp enough to recognize that death was approaching and certain truths would never be spoken unless he found a way to speak them. The first note appeared on his bedside table 3 months after the stroke. Shaking letters, barely legible, written with a hand that no longer obeyed its owner properly. Ask your mother about what she hid. He read those words 17 times before their meaning fully penetrated. He confronted his mother in the hospital corridor that evening, keeping his voice low because the family had always valued discretion above honesty. What did you hide from me? His mother's face flickered with something before she controlled it. Fear, perhaps. Or calculation. Or the recognition that her control was finally slipping after years of absolute authority. Your father is confused. The stroke affected his cognitive function more than the doctors initially believed. He knows something. He would not have written that note if there was nothing to find. There is nothing to find. But there was. The birth certificate was hidden in a box of old business files that his mother was moving out of the family estate. She had probably thought it would never surface. Probably believed his father's stroke would take him before any deathbed confessions could emerge. But the old man had written it down instead. The birth certificate she hid. And he found it in a box labeled Estate Records 1998 while searching for evidence he was increasingly certain existed. His name was listed as father. Her name was listed as mother. Twin boys. Born 8 months after divorce papers he barely remembered signing because he was drowning in grief and corporate catastrophe and his parents' insistence that they were saving him from ruin. The document fell from his hands to the floor. And his entire reality collapsed into before and after. The confrontation with his mother happened in the sunroom of the family estate, where light poured through windows and made everything look bright and clear and nothing like the darkness of what he was about to uncover. How could you? His mother sat perfectly still in her chair. The picture of composure. As if being accused of hiding grandchildren was no more concerning than being asked about a schedule conflict. You found the birth certificate. You knew. You knew she was pregnant. You knew she had children. My children. And you hid it from me for 5 years. I was protecting you. The words landed like slaps. Protecting me. Protecting me from knowing I had sons. Protecting me from knowing the woman I loved had not abandoned me, had not terminated the pregnancy like you told me she did. Protecting me from what exactly? The chance to be a father. His mother's composure finally cracked, just slightly. A flicker of something that might have been regret crossing her features before she controlled it. She was unsuitable. Her background, her career, her lack of connection to anyone who mattered. A marriage to her would have weakened everything this family has built. And when she became pregnant, I saw an opportunity to end the situation permanently. An opportunity. She had my signatures forged on documents. She created evidence that I knew about the pregnancy and paid to make it disappear. She told me the pregnancy was terminated and the settlement money taken. She told her the opposite. Told her I knew and chose to abandon her. Yes. The single word carried no apology. No acknowledgement that what she had done was monstrous. Just confirmation of facts, as if she were reviewing a business transaction rather than confessing to destroying lives. You made her believe I abandoned her and my sons. You made me believe she chose money over family. You kept us apart through lies told to both of us. I did what I thought was necessary. He walked out of the sunroom without another word. Because there were no words sufficient for what he was feeling. No response that could contain the rage and grief and desperate need to fix something that might be permanently broken. He hired a private investigator that same day. The search took 18 months. Sealed records. Changed addresses. The deliberate disappearance of someone who did not want to be found by anyone connected to his family. Dead ends that made him want to tear the world apart with his bare hands. But he kept looking. restructured his entire life to remove his parents' influence from every aspect of the family holdings, systematically dismantled the control they had maintained for decades. His mother protested each change but lacked the authority to stop him. Watched her legacy get redistributed and reorganized under principles she did not recognize. His father died without reconciliation. The funeral was full of colleagues who knew the old man through business rather than relationship. Eulogies about professional accomplishments that never mentioned actual character or the cruelty he participated in before his stroke carved guilt into his final months. The estate lawyer delivered a letter afterward. His father's shaking handwriting. A final confession. I did not know about the forgeries until after she was gone. Your mother showed me what she had done and I was too weak to oppose her. I let her destroy your family because opposing her felt harder than living with the consequences. The birth certificate is in my private safe. The boys are yours. I am sorry. Sorry. As if sorry could restore 5 years of his sons' lives. As if sorry could undo the damage his silence had allowed. He kept searching. And 3 weeks before arriving at that marina, he finally found her. Her name attached to a medical illustration in an obscure pediatric journal. A style he did not recognize at first, more fluid than her old work, clearly done with a different hand. But the signature was hers. And the trail from that signature led to professional networks and old contacts and finally to an address in a coastal town he had never heard of. He went himself rather than sending investigators ahead. Needed to see before approaching. Needed to understand the life she had built before asking for any space in it. He watched from a distance for 3 days. Saw her leave for work in the mornings, salt-stained overalls and hair pulled back carelessly. Saw her return in the afternoons to collect the boys from a neighbor who watched them briefly during the transition. Saw the casual intimacy of a life lived in community support rather than wealth. Saw the twins through windows as they ate dinner together. Saw her help with homework and enforce bedtime and read stories with voices that made the boys laugh. Saw a complete family unit that had no space for him. No need for him. No acknowledgement that he should have been there all along. The watching felt like penance and torture simultaneously. Like pressing on a wound to confirm it still hurts. Like trying to memorize something he had never actually possessed. He told himself he was gathering courage to approach. But truthfully, he was paralyzed by understanding. That he had no right to any of it. That his absence had been complete enough that his sons were entirely shaped by someone else's love. That the woman who raised them alone believed with absolute certainty that he had chosen to abandon them. The marina encounter had not been planned. He was supposed to watch for 1 more day and then approach carefully, thoughtfully, with explanations prepared and evidence organized and every possible response anticipated. Instead, he had seen them at the dock and frozen. And she had seen him and gathered her children and fled. And now he was standing in an empty parking lot, holding evidence that could prove his innocence, with no way to make her listen to what it said. He found her again 3 days later. The marine sanctuary where she volunteered sat at the edge of the harbor, a collection of weathered buildings connected by covered walkways that protected visitors from coastal weather. Tanks full of recovering sea life visible through salt-streaked windows. The smell of ocean everywhere, permeating everything. He found her in an observation room, sketching a sea turtle with damaged flippers that was slowly healing under the sanctuary's care. Her hand moved with fluid precision across the paper. The skill that had always amazed him, even more impressive now that he knew she had rebuilt it with her opposite hand after stress destroyed her original ability. She did not look up when he entered. But she knew he was there. You do not get to be here. Her voice was quiet and controlled in a way that suggested volcanic fury barely contained beneath the surface. I need to explain what happened. I need you to understand that I did not know. She set down her pencil with deliberate care and finally turned to face him. The rage in her eyes was so absolute it made him take an involuntary step backward. Explain. You want to explain. You want to tell me some story about how you are actually innocent, how you were tricked, how none of this was your fault. And I should just listen and nod and let you feel better about 5 years of absence. It is not a story. My mother forged my involvement in everything. She told you lies and told me lies and kept us apart through deception I did not discover until my father was dying. Your mother showed me emails in your name. She showed me bank statements with your authorization. She showed me evidence that you knew about the pregnancy and chose to make it disappear along with our marriage. So whatever fiction you have constructed about your own innocence, I lived through the reality of your choices. He pulled the folder from his jacket. The evidence he had spent months compiling. Forensic analysis of digital signatures. Timestamps proving he was not in the state when certain documents were signed. Email server logs showing messages came from his mother's computer rather than his own. I have proof. Documentation that shows everything was forged. My mother had power of attorney during the company crisis. She used that authority to create evidence of decisions I never made. She looked at the folder without taking it. Even if that is true, even if every document in that folder proves what you claim, you still chose the divorce. Your mother did not forge that choice. You signed those papers yourself. The words hit him like physical blows. Because she was right. His mother had manipulated the situation with extraordinary cruelty. But the initial decision, the agreement to consider ending the marriage, the signing of papers without ever speaking to his wife directly. Those had been his choices. His failures. His cowardice. I made the wrong choice. I let my parents convince me that the company was more important than our marriage, that family legacy mattered more than family love. I was weak when I should have been brave. And I have regretted it every single day since. She laughed, and the sound contained no humor. Only bitterness refined by 5 years of justified anger. You regretted it. How comforting for you. Meanwhile, I was living in my sister's basement, pregnant with twins, watching my entire career collapse because of non-compete clauses I did not understand until it was too late. While you were regretting your choices from your penthouse apartment, I was scrubbing toilets at midnight to keep food on the table. He felt tears sliding down his face. Made no attempt to wipe them away. Let her see the devastation her words caused because she deserved to see it, deserved to know her pain had reached him even if that knowledge changed nothing. They are my sons. They are 5 years old and they have my eyes and I have never held them. I have never heard them laugh up close. I have never been there for a nightmare or a birthday or any of the 1,000 moments that make a parent and a child know each other. She stepped closer, and her voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. No. The word landed like a door slamming shut. You do not get to use them to process your guilt. You do not get to appear after 5 years and claim space in lives you had no part in building. Those boys do not know you exist. They do not know their father's name. They have a life that feels safe and complete because I made it safe and complete. And I will not let you destroy that stability because you finally discovered consequences. Please. Just let me explain properly. Let me show you the evidence. Let me prove that I was lied to as completely as you were. She gathered her things and moved toward the door. Do not come here again. Do not approach them at the dock or their school or anywhere else they might be. Do not try to insert yourself into something you chose to abandon. I did not choose to abandon them. I did not know they existed. She stopped at the door, turned to look at him one final time. And her expression shifted from rage to something worse. Something cold. Something final. You chose every single day you did not look for me yourself. You chose every time you accepted your parents' version of events without verification. You chose the comfortable lie over the difficult truth because fighting would have been harder than accepting what you were told. That is the choice that matters. Not whether you knew about the twins. Whether you cared enough about me to question the story you were fed. And she was gone. He stood alone in the observation room, surrounded by tanks full of healing creatures, holding evidence that could prove his innocence to a woman who was right about everything that actually mattered. The sea turtle swam in slow circles behind the glass. And he understood that proving his mother's deception would not be enough. That the real betrayal was not the lies he believed. It was the questions he never asked. The investigation he never conducted. The wife he never fought for. She was right about all of it. And the weight of that truth threatened to crush him entirely. That night, he sat in the rental cottage he had taken in the coastal town, surrounded by the evidence of his mother's crimes and the proof of his own inadequacy. The folder full of documentation sat unopened on the table. What good was proving his mother forged documents when the fundamental failure was his? What good was establishing her deception when his own cowardice had made the deception possible? He had been given a choice between his wife and his family legacy. And he had chosen legacy. Everything that followed, the forged emails, the hidden birth certificate, the 5 years of separation from sons he never knew existed, all of it had roots in that single moment of weakness. His mother had watered those roots, had cultivated the separation with extraordinary malice, had ensured that he and his wife never had the conversation that might have saved everything. But the seed had been his, planted in the soil of his own cowardice. He looked at his phone, considered calling her, knew she would not answer, considered calling his mother to rage at her again, knew it would change nothing, considered getting in his car and driving back to the life he had built, the penthouse and the company and the existence that looked successful from every external angle while feeling hollow from within. But he did not leave. Because somewhere in this coastal town, 2 boys with his eyes were sleeping in beds their mother had worked midnight shifts to afford. Were dreaming dreams he knew nothing about. Were growing into people shaped entirely by her love and his absence. He could not fix the past. But maybe, if he stayed long enough and proved himself thoroughly enough and earned trust through actions rather than explanations, maybe he could be part of their future. The question was whether she would ever allow it. The question was whether he deserved for her to allow it. The question was whether love, the real kind that cost something to maintain, could survive what had been done to it. He did not have answers. But for the first time in 5 years, he was asking the right questions. And that felt like a beginning, even if the ending was nowhere in sight. The call came 3 days after their confrontation at the marine sanctuary. He was sitting in the rental cottage, staring at the folder of evidence he had brought, wondering if there was any way to make her listen. The phone lit up with an unknown number. He answered without expecting anything. Her voice came through the speaker, controlled and cold. "I have conditions." He sat up straighter, gripped the phone like it might disappear. "I am listening. You do not approach them directly. You do not buy them expensive things. You do not disrupt their routine or confuse them with explanations they are too young to understand. Okay. You can attend public events, soccer games, school performances, things where other parents are present and your attendance would not be unusual. But you stay at a distance. You do not speak to them unless they approach you first. I understand. I will be watching everything, evaluating everything, deciding if you are safe enough to know them or if you are just another man who will disappoint them when something more important comes along." He closed his eyes against the sting of tears. "Whatever you need. However long it takes." A pause on the other end of the line. Then her voice again, slightly less cold. "Their soccer team practices on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Games are Saturday mornings at the community field behind the elementary school. There is a performance at their school next month. A holiday program. They both have small parts. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. You have not proven anything. You have just been given a chance to try." She hung up without saying goodbye. And he sat in the silence of the cottage, holding his phone, understanding that this was more than he deserved and less than he wanted and exactly what he needed to accept. The first soccer game happened on a Saturday morning when mist hung low over the community field and the grass was still wet from overnight rain. He arrived early, parked at the far end of the lot, walked to the bleachers and chose a seat at the end, away from the clusters of parents who clearly knew each other. The teams warmed up on opposite ends of the field. Small bodies in oversized jerseys, kicking balls with more enthusiasm than accuracy. And there, among the group in blue, were his sons. The taller one, the one with the serious expression, was organizing his teammates into some kind of formation, pointing and directing and clearly frustrated when others did not understand his vision. His intensity was visible even from across the field. A child who took things seriously, who needed order and structure to feel safe. The smaller one was chatting with everyone around him, making friends with opponents during the warm-up, laughing at something a teammate said. His openness was equally visible. A child who connected easily, who found joy in people rather than systems. He watched them with an ache so profound it felt like illness. These were his sons, and they had no idea he existed. She arrived a few minutes before the game started, carrying a folding chair and a thermos. She set up on the opposite side of the field from where he Saturday. Did not acknowledge his presence. But he knew she saw him. Knew she was watching to see what he would do. He did nothing. Sat in the bleachers as the game began. Cheered when the blue team scored, careful to keep his voice at the same volume as other parents. winced when the serious one missed a shot and threw his hands up in frustration, smiled when the friendly one helped an opponent up after a collision and received a pat on the back from the referee for good sportsmanship. The game ended in a tie. The boys ran to their mother, talking over each other about plays and goals and perceived injustices from the referee's calls. She listened to both of them simultaneously, a skill that clearly came from years of practice. Handed them juice boxes from her bag. Shepherded them toward the parking lot. The friendly one looked back over his shoulder as they walked away. His gaze found the man sitting alone at the end of the bleachers. And he waved. Just a small wave. The automatic friendliness of a child who had been taught that kindness costs nothing. Then his mother's hand touched his shoulder, guiding his attention forward. And they were gone. He sat in the bleachers for 10 minutes after everyone else left, watching the empty field, processing the magnitude of what he had just witnessed. His sons, playing soccer, being children, completely unaware that their father was watching from 50 yards away, trying to memorize everything about them. It was not enough, but it was a start. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Tuesday practices, Thursday practices, Saturday games. He attended every single one. Rain or shine, busy schedule or not. He was there. Same seat at the end of the bleachers. Same careful distance from the other parents. Same intense attention to every moment involving either of his sons. He learned their playing styles. The serious one was tactical. Thought 3 moves ahead. Got frustrated when teammates did not follow the strategy he had clearly explained during warm-ups. His talent was real but hampered by his inability to accept that other children might not share his commitment to optimal play. The friendly one was intuitive. Made decisions on instinct rather than calculation. Often surprised himself with successful moves he had not consciously planned. His talent was equally real but undermined by his tendency to prioritize making everyone happy over winning. He learned their physical habits. The serious one needed water breaks more frequently than his brother. Would push through discomfort until he collapsed if no one reminded him to rest. His determination was admirable and dangerous in equal measure. The friendly one needed verbal encouragement constantly. Would wilt visibly if he felt overlooked or criticized. His sensitivity was a gift and a vulnerability simultaneously. He learned their relationships. The serious one had one close friend on the team. A quiet boy who seemed to understand his intensity and matched it with patient acceptance. They communicated in shorthand developed over what was clearly years of shared history. The friendly one was friends with everyone, but spread his attention so widely that no single connection went particularly deep. He was beloved and slightly lonely in a way that probably confused him. He learned all of this from a distance. Watching without speaking. Present without participating. Proving through consistency what words could never establish. She watched him watching them. He saw her eyes track toward his bleacher seat during games. Saw her note his attendance at every practice. Saw her expression shift over time from suspicion to something that might have been grudging acknowledgement. She never spoke to him during these events. Never acknowledged his presence directly. But she stopped positioning herself on the opposite side of the field. Started setting up her chair closer to center, where she could see both the game and the man who never missed an opportunity to see his sons. It was not trust. But it was the beginning of something that might become trust eventually. 3 months into his vigil, the serious one approached him. It happened after a particularly frustrating game where the blue team had lost by 3 goals and the serious one had been visibly furious with his teammates for most of the second half. He had stormed off the field while the other children lined up to shake hands with opponents. Had walked directly toward the bleachers where his mother usually Saturday. But she had stepped away to speak with another parent. And the only adult in his path was the man who sat alone at the end. The serious one stopped 5 feet away. Evaluated him with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under examination. Why do you come to every game? The question was direct. Demanding. Expecting a satisfactory answer. He chose his words carefully. Because I am hoping to get to know someone. If they will let me. The serious one processed this response. Tested it for logical consistency. You do not know anyone on either team. You never talk to the other parents. You just sit here and watch. That is true. So who are you hoping to get to know? A pause. the weight of 5 years pressing against his chest. I am hoping to get to know you. And your brother. If your mother thinks that would be okay. The serious one's eyes narrowed. Do you know our mother? I did. A long time ago. Before you were born. Are you the reason she cries sometimes when she thinks we are asleep? The question hit him like a physical blow. His sons had heard their mother crying. Had absorbed the knowledge that someone or something had hurt her deeply enough to cause tears she tried to hide. And the serious one had somehow connected that grief to the stranger who watched them every week. I hope not. But I might be. The serious one considered this admission. Seemed to appreciate the honesty. She does not like to talk about before. She says the past is done and we should focus on what comes next. That sounds like wise advice. But the past is not really done, is it? The serious one asked. It is still here. That is why you keep coming. He looked at this small person who saw too much, understood too much, carried too much awareness for someone so young. You are very smart. I know. Everyone tells me that. But being smart does not mean I understand everything. What do you want to understand? The serious one looked toward where his mother was finishing her conversation with another parent. Then back at the man on the bleachers. I want to understand why she is sad underneath even when she is smiling. I want to understand why she never talks about our father. I want to understand why you look at us like you are trying to memorize something you already lost. The silence stretched between them. He did not know how to answer without saying too much. Without disrupting the careful distance he had promised to maintain. Without overwhelming a child with truths that belonged in adult conversations. Those are good questions. And I think your mother should be the one to answer them. When she is ready. The serious one nodded slowly. She is coming back. I should go. He started to walk away, then turned back. My name is not important yet. But you should know I am going to keep coming to games. And practices. And anything else I am allowed to attend. Until your mother decides whether I am trustworthy. How will she decide that? By watching what I do. Over time. To see if my actions match my words. The serious one seemed satisfied by this answer. That seems like a logical approach. He walked toward his mother, who was looking at them with an expression that mixed alarm and something that might have been hope. Later that night, his phone buzzed with a text from her number. What did he say to you? He told me I am the reason you cry sometimes. And asked why I look at them like I am memorizing something I lost. A long pause before her response came. What did you tell him? That you should be the one to answer his questions. When you are ready. Another pause. That was the right answer. He waited for more, but nothing else came. And he understood that they had taken another small step toward something neither of them could name yet. The holiday performance arrived in December, when the coastal town had decorated itself with lights that reflected off the harbor water and made everything look like a postcard. He took a seat in the back of the school auditorium. Parents and grandparents and siblings filled the rows ahead of him, chattering about children and holidays and the universal stress of the season. Teachers moved along the aisles, distributing programs and managing expectations about photography during the performance. She was seated near the front with her mother, who had apparently come for the event. He recognized the older woman from photographs he had studied during his investigation. Strong features softened by warmth. The same determined jaw her daughter had inherited. The program was endearingly chaotic. Children forgot lines and improvised wildly. Musical numbers went off-key but were delivered with such enthusiasm that no one minded. Teachers prompted from the wings with varying degrees of subtlety. The serious one played a narrator role, reading from cards with careful precision, maintaining composure even when other children giggled or made mistakes around him. The friendly one played a character who had multiple costume changes. He threw himself into each role with joyful abandon, made faces that got laughs from the audience, bowed with theatrical flourish after his biggest scene. They were wonderful. Both of them. Completely different and completely complementary. After the performance, families gathered in the cafeteria for cookies and punch provided by the parent volunteer organization. He stood near the door, watching from a distance as his sons received congratulations from relatives and family friends. The friendly one spotted him across the room. And before anyone could stop him, He crossed the cafeteria in a direct line toward the stranger he had been noticing at soccer games for months. "Hello. I am the younger twin. My brother told me you come to all our games." "Hello. That is true. I do. Why?" "Because I want to get to know you and your brother. If your mother allows it." The friendly one considered this with the openness that characterized everything he did. "Do you like soccer?" "I like watching you play soccer." A bright smile broke across the small face. "I am not as good as my brother. He has strategy. I just run around and hope for the best." "That sounds like a valid approach to me." The friendly one laughed. "You are funny. Most adults tell me I need to focus more and plan ahead. Maybe different people have different strengths." The serious one appeared at his brother's shoulder, having noticed the unauthorized conversation and come to monitor it. "We should go back. Mom is looking for us." "Okay. But I wanted to say hello first." The friendly one waved at him as his brother guided him back toward their family. "Bye, game watching man. See you at the next game." Game watching man. It was not his name, but it was what he had become to them. And for now, that was enough. 6 months into his consistent presence, she invited him to have coffee. The invitation came through text, as their communications always did. A neutral location suggested. A public cafe where other people would provide witnesses to whatever conversation happened. He arrived early, ordered coffee, chose a table by the window where she would be able to see him from the street before entering. She arrived precisely on time, sat across from him without ordering anything, studied his face with the analytical intensity he remembered from their marriage. The way she would look at specimens she was preparing to illustrate, searching for details others might miss. "The boys have been talking about you. What do they say?" "The little one calls you game watching man. He thinks you are funny and nice and probably lonely since you always sit by yourself." He smiled despite himself. "The serious one. He says you are patient. That you never push. That you seem to understand boundaries and respect them. He says that is unusual for adults who want something from children. What do you think?" She took a breath. Let it out slowly. "I think you have been more consistent than I expected. I think you have not tried to buy them with expensive things or fast-track a relationship that needs time to develop naturally. I think you have done exactly what you said you would do, which is show up and prove yourself through actions. But I still do not know if that is enough. I do not know if consistency for 6 months predicts consistency for 6 years. I do not know if the version of you I am seeing is real or performance. How can I prove the difference?" She looked out the window at the coastal town that had become her home. Time. More showing up. More proving that you can handle disappointment and difficulty without walking away. "I can do that." "Can you?" "Because they are going to push you. Test you. Say things that hurt because they are children and children do not always know how to express complicated feelings without causing damage. And if you react badly, if you withdraw when it gets hard, they will learn the same lesson I learned 5 years ago." "What lesson is that?" "That men leave when things become difficult. That love is conditional on everything being easy. That the people who promise to stay are just as likely to abandon you as anyone else." He absorbed this. Understood that he was not just proving himself to the boys. He was trying to disprove something she believed about all men, about him specifically, about the fundamental reliability of anyone who claimed to love. "I will stay," he said. "Not because I deserve to, but because they deserve someone who will not leave. Even when it gets hard. Even when they push. Even when you are not sure I am trustworthy. I will keep showing up until the showing up itself becomes the proof." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "I want to expand the contact. Supervised visits. Public places. You can have conversations with them. Take them for ice cream after games. Nothing at your place or mine. Nothing that looks like parenting. Just getting to know each other. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Thank me when they trust you. If they ever do." She stood to leave. "There is something else you should know." He waited. "My mother wants to meet you. She has opinions about this situation. She will share them whether you want to hear them or not. I would be honored to meet her. Do not say honored until you have survived the conversation. She left the cafe without looking back. And he sat with his cooling coffee, understanding that the next phase of proving himself was about to begin. Her mother arrived at his rental cottage unannounced. He opened the door to find her standing on the porch, arms crossed, expression carrying the weight of every judgment she had formed over 5 years of watching her daughter rebuild a life from ruins. "May I come in?" "Of course." She entered and looked around the small space. Noted the evidence folders still stacked on the table. The modest furnishings. The lack of anything that suggested his wealth. "You are not living like a billionaire." "I am not trying to be a billionaire here. I am trying to be a father." She sat in the chair across from the couch without being invited. Established herself as someone who did not require permission. "My daughter cried for 2 years after you left. Not every day. Not always when anyone could see. But I know my child. I know when she is breaking and trying to hide it." "I did not know." "Of course you did not know. You were too busy believing whatever your mother told you to actually investigate whether any of it was true." He accepted the accusation without defense. She had to teach herself to draw with her other hand because the stress destroyed her ability to use her dominant one. "Did you know that?" "I learned recently." She worked night scrubbing toilets while pregnant with twins because the settlement your family engineered destroyed her career. "Did you know that?" "I am learning more every day." She built everything from nothing. With no help from you or your money or your connections. She created a life for those boys that is full of love and stability and security. And now you want to walk into the middle of it and claim a place you did not earn. He met her eyes directly. "Yes. That is exactly what I want. And I know I have not earned it. That is why I am trying to prove myself rather than demanding access." Her mother's expression shifted slightly. Something like respect flickering beneath the hostility. "Why should I believe you will stay?" "Because leaving would mean losing them again. And losing them once was enough to teach me that nothing else matters compared to being their father." Pretty words. I know words mean nothing. That is why I am trying to prove it through actions instead. She was quiet for a long moment, studying him the way her daughter had studied him in the cafe, looking for weakness or deception or any sign that he was not what he claimed to be. "She forgives too easily," her mother finally said. "Always has. Sees the best in people even when they do not deserve it. That is how she ended up married to you in the first place. She saw something real. The marriage was real. The love was real. And yet you let your parents end it without fighting." "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because I was weak. Because I was trained from birth to value their approval above my own judgment. Because I made the coward's choice when I should have made the brave one." "At least you are honest about it. There is no point in lying. The facts speak for themselves." Her mother stood, walked to the window, looked out at the coastal view. "Those boys are my grandchildren. I have watched them grow from helpless infants into remarkable young people. I have been there for every milestone their father missed. Every first word. Every first step. Every nightmare and triumph and ordinary Tuesday. I know. And I am grateful they had you." She turned to face him. The serious one appeared at his brother's shoulder, having noticed the unauthorized conversation and come to monitor it. "We should go back. Mom is looking for us." "Okay. But I wanted to say hello first." The friendly one waved at him as his brother guided him back toward their family. "Bye, game watching man. See you at the next game." Game watching man. It was not his name. But it was what he had become to them. And for now, that was enough. 6 months into his consistent presence, she invited him to have coffee. The invitation came through text, as their communications always did. A neutral location suggested. A public cafe where other people would provide witnesses to whatever conversation happened. He arrived early, ordered coffee, chose a table by the window where she would be able to see him from the street before entering. She arrived precisely on time, sat across from him without ordering anything, studied his face with the analytical intensity he remembered from their marriage. The way she would look at specimens she was preparing to illustrate, searching for details others might miss. "The boys have been talking about you. What do they say?" The little one calls you game-watching man. He thinks you are funny and nice and probably lonely since you always sit by yourself. He smiled despite himself. The serious one. He says you are patient. That you never push. That you seem to understand boundaries and respect them. He says that is unusual for adults who want something from children. What do you think? She took a breath. Let it out slowly. I think you have been more consistent than I expected. I think you have not tried to buy them with expensive things or fast-track a relationship that needs time to develop naturally. I think you have done exactly what you said you would do, which is show up and prove yourself through actions. But I still do not know if that is enough. I do not know if consistency for 6 months predicts consistency for 6 years. I do not know if the version of you I am seeing is real or performance. How can I prove the difference? She looked out the window at the coastal town that had become her home. Time. More showing up. More proving that you can handle disappointment and difficulty without walking away. I can do that. Can you? Because they are going to push you. Test you. Say things that hurt because they are children, and children do not always know how to express complicated feelings without causing damage. And if you react badly, if you withdraw when it gets hard, they will learn the same lesson I learned 5 years ago. What lesson is that? That men leave when things become difficult. That love is conditional on everything being easy. That the people who promise to stay are just as likely to abandon you as anyone else. He absorbed this. Understood that he was not just proving himself to the boys. He was trying to disprove something she believed about all men, about him specifically, about the fundamental reliability of anyone who claimed to love. I will stay, he said. Not because I deserve to, but because they deserve someone who will not leave. Even when it gets hard. Even when they push. Even when you are not sure I am trustworthy. I will keep showing up until the showing up itself becomes the proof. She looked at him for a long moment. Then nodded once. I want to expand the contact. Supervised visits. Public places. You can have conversations with them. Take them for ice cream after games. Nothing at your place or mine. Nothing that looks like parenting. Just getting to know each other. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. Thank me when they trust you. If they ever do. She stood to leave. There is something else you should know. He waited. My mother wants to meet you. She has opinions about this situation. She will share them whether you want to hear them or not. I would be honored to meet her. Do not say honored until you have survived the conversation. She left the cafe without looking back. And he sat with his cooling coffee, understanding that the next phase of proving himself was about to begin. Her mother arrived at his rental cottage unannounced. He opened the door to find her standing on the porch, arms crossed, expression carrying the weight of every judgment she had formed over 5 years of watching her daughter rebuild a life from ruins. May I come in? Of course. She entered and looked around the small space. Noted the evidence folders still stacked on the table. The modest furnishings. The lack of anything that suggested his wealth. You are not living like a billionaire. I am not trying to be a billionaire here. I am trying to be a father. She sat in the chair across from the couch without being invited. Established herself as someone who did not require permission. My daughter cried for 2 years after you left. Not every day. Not always when anyone could see. But I know my child. I know when she is breaking and trying to hide it. I did not know. Of course you did not know. You were too busy believing whatever your mother told you to actually investigate whether any of it was true. He accepted the accusation without defense. She had to teach herself to draw with her other hand because the stress destroyed her ability to use her dominant one. Did you know that? I learned recently. She worked night scrubbing toilets while pregnant with twins because the settlement your family engineered destroyed her career. Did you know that? I am learning more every day. She built everything from nothing. With no help from you or your money or your connections. She created a life for those boys that is full of love and stability and security. And now you want to walk into the middle of it and claim a place you did not earn. He met her eyes directly. Yes. That is exactly what I want. And I know I have not earned it. That is why I am trying to prove myself rather than demanding access. Her mother's expression shifted slightly. Something like respect flickering beneath the hostility. Why should I believe you will stay? Because leaving would mean losing them again. And losing them once was enough to teach me that nothing else matters compared to being their father. Pretty words. I know words mean nothing. That is why I am trying to prove it through actions instead. She was quiet for a long moment, studying him the way her daughter had studied him in the cafe, looking for weakness or deception or any sign that he was not what he claimed to be. She forgives too easily, her mother finally said. Always has. Sees the best in people even when they do not deserve it. That is how she ended up married to you in the first place. She saw something real. The marriage was real. The love was real. And yet you let your parents end it without fighting. Yes, I did. Why? Because I was weak. Because I was trained from birth to value their approval above my own judgment. Because I made the coward's choice when I should have made the brave one. At least you are honest about it. There is no point in lying. The facts speak for themselves. Her mother stood, walked to the window, looked out at the coastal view. Those boys are my grandchildren. I have watched them grow from helpless infants into remarkable young people. I have been there for every milestone their father missed. Every first word. Every first step. Every nightmare and triumph and ordinary Tuesday. I know. And I am grateful they had you. She turned to face him. If you hurt them, if you disappoint them, if you walk away when things get difficult, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. I understand. She moved toward the door. Stopped with her hand on the knob. She wants to believe you. That is dangerous for her. It means she could be hurt again. I know. Make sure you are worth the risk she is taking. She left without waiting for a response. And he understood that he had just passed a test. But the real tests were still ahead. The supervised visits began in February. Ice cream after games. Lunch at the diner near the marine sanctuary. Walks along the harbor where he had first seen them. The friendly one embraced the new arrangement immediately. Talked constantly. Asked questions about everything. Wanted to know his favorite color and his favorite food and whether he had ever seen a whale up close. The serious one remained cautious. Observed more than participated. Tested the boundaries of what questions would be answered and which topics seemed to make the adult uncomfortable. He answered everything honestly. Told them about his work without emphasizing the wealth it represented. Told them about growing up in a family that valued legacy over love. Told them, carefully and age-appropriately, that he had made mistakes in the past and was trying to do better. 3 months into the supervised visits, the serious one asked the question that had been building. Are you our father? The words hung in the afternoon air. They were sitting on a bench overlooking the harbor. The friendly one was chasing seagulls along the water's edge. The serious one had stayed behind, apparently waiting for privacy. He took a breath. Considered how to answer in a way that was honest without overwhelming. Yes, I am. The serious one nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had already suspected. Why did you leave? I did not know you existed. Someone told me lies that made me believe your mother did not want me in her life anymore. And I believed those lies instead of finding out the truth myself. Who told you lies? My mother. Your grandmother. She did not approve of your mother, so she created a story that would keep us apart. The serious one processed this information with the intensity he brought to everything. Is your mother still alive? No. She died a few months ago. Are you sad about that? He considered the question carefully. I am sad that she never got to know you. I am sad that she chose to hurt people instead of accepting that love does not always look the way you expected. But I am not sad the way I would be if she had been a good person who treated people well. The serious one seemed satisfied by this nuanced answer. Mom says you have been proving yourself. That you come to all our games and never push for more than she is ready to give. That is true. She says trust has to be earned through actions, not words. Your mother is very wise. The serious one looked at him directly. Amber eyes meeting amber eyes. I am not ready to call you dad yet. I need more time to decide if you are going to stay. That is completely fair. You should take whatever time you need. But I might be ready eventually. If you keep showing up. I will keep showing up for as long as you let me. The serious one stood from the bench. The little one is going to want to call you dad immediately. He attaches quickly. It is going to be harder for you to earn my trust than his. I understand. Good. The serious one walked toward his brother. And he sat on the bench, watching his sons play along the waterfront, understanding that he had just received conditional acceptance from a child wise enough to withhold full trust until it was warranted. It was progress. Slow, careful progress. Exactly the kind that meant something. The first overnight visit happened 8 months after the coffee meeting. She had agreed to let them spend a Saturday at his cottage. Not sleeping over, but spending the day. Seeing where he lived. Having a meal together. He prepared obsessively. Bought groceries for a lunch they could make together. Set up the guest room with activities he thought they might enjoy. Removed any evidence of wealth that might make the contrast with their modest life uncomfortable. They arrived at noon. The friendly one immediately began exploring every corner of the small space. Opening cabinets and examining books and asking questions about every object he encountered. The serious one moved more carefully. Evaluated the environment for safety and suitability. Noted the evidence folders still visible on a shelf and filed the observation away for later analysis. They made sandwiches together. A simple activity that became complicated and messy and filled with laughter when the friendly one accidentally dropped an entire jar of pickles on the floor. He did not get angry. Did not express frustration. Just cleaned up the mess with good humor and suggested they use the remaining pickles more carefully. The serious one watched this response intently, as if waiting for the mask to slip, for the patience to reveal itself as performance. After lunch, they walked to the beach. Built something that was supposed to be a sandcastle but evolved into an elaborate fort with multiple defensive positions and a moat system the serious one designed with engineering precision. The friendly one collected shells to decorate the structure. Narrated an ongoing story about the imaginary inhabitants. Created drama and romance and military conflict in equal measure. He participated in both activities. Helped dig where directed. Listened to narratives with genuine interest. Let them lead while supporting from behind. When she arrived to pick them up, she found all 3 of them covered in sand, laughing about something the friendly one had said. She stood at the edge of the beach for a moment before approaching. Her expression carrying something he had not seen there before. Something that looked almost like hope. The drive home was apparently filled with excited recounting of every moment of the day. Both boys talking over each other. Sharing details and impressions and opinions about the man they had spent hours getting to know. Her text that night was brief. They want to do it again next weekend. His response was equally brief. I would like that very much. And the visits became regular after that. Every weekend. Sometimes longer. The cottage filling with evidence of his son's presence. Drawings on the refrigerator. Toys left behind for next time. The gradual domestication of a space that had been intended as temporary. 1 year after his arrival in the coastal town, she invited him to dinner at her house. The invitation felt monumental. A crossing of thresholds that had remained firmly in place despite all the progress. Her home had been protected territory. The space where she had built everything without him. Letting him enter felt like acknowledging that he might belong there. He arrived with flowers and wine and a nervous energy that reminded him of their first date years earlier. The boys greeted him at the door with an enthusiasm that still surprised him. Still felt unearned despite all the showing up. Still registered as miracle rather than expectation. The serious one had set the table with precise attention to placement. Everything aligned. Everything orderly. His contribution to the evening carefully organized. The friendly one had made a welcome sign with markers and glitter that covered approximately 40% of his shirt and face as well as the paper. She stood in the kitchen, watching him take in the scene of his sons welcoming him to their home. Her expression guarded but present. Allowing the moment without fully embracing it. Dinner was pasta that the boys had helped prepare. Sauce on the wall from enthusiastic stirring. Noodles slightly overcooked because the friendly one had been telling a story and everyone forgot to set a timer. It was perfect. Not perfect in the polished way his parents' dinners had been perfect. Perfect in the chaotic, alive, full of love way that real family meals were perfect. After dinner, the boys showed him their room. Bunk beds they had chosen together. Books and toys and the accumulated treasures of childhood arranged on shelves and spilling onto the floor. This is my side, the serious one explained, indicating an area of precise organization. This is my side, the friendly one added, gesturing toward an area of creative chaos. They argued about whose side was better while simultaneously agreeing that sharing a room was the only acceptable arrangement because they did not like being apart. He looked at her standing in the doorway, watching him observe their sons in their natural habitat. "Thank you," he said, "for letting me be here." "You have earned it," she replied. "At least partially." "Only partially. Trust takes time. You are further along than I expected, but we are not done yet." "I understand." The boys demanded attention again, wanting to show him their collection of rocks from the beach and explain the classification system the serious one had developed and argue about whether certain specimens had been correctly categorized. He examined each rock with genuine interest, asked questions that demonstrated he was actually listening. Let them teach him about their small world while she watched from the doorway, her expression slowly softening into something that looked almost like peace. When bedtime arrived, both boys asked if he would read to them. He looked at her for permission. She nodded. He sat between their beds and read 3 chapters of a book about children who discovered a secret door to a magical world. Used voices for different characters. Paused at dramatic moments. Let them interrupt with questions and theories and demands to know what happened next. When the chapter ended, the friendly one was already asleep. But the serious one was still awake, looking at him with an expression that had lost most of its wariness over the past year. "I think I am ready," the serious one said quietly. "Ready for what?" "Ready to try calling you Dad. To see how it feels." His throat closed completely. Eyes stinging with tears he could not stop. "I would like that very much. It might take some getting used to. But I want to try. Take whatever time you need. I am not going anywhere." The serious one nodded, closed his eyes, drifted toward sleep with the trust of a child who was finally deciding to believe. He sat between his sons' beds for several minutes, watching them breathe, memorizing the moment. Then he stood and walked to the hallway where she was waiting. She had been crying, wiping tears quickly when he appeared, pretending she had not heard the conversation. He did not pretend. "Thank you," he said again. "You earned it," she said. And this time there was no qualifier. They stood in the hallway of the house she had built without him. The house that contained the life she had created from ruins. The house that was slowly, carefully making room for his presence. "I still do not know if I can love you again," she said quietly. The damage was so profound. The betrayal felt so complete for so long. "I understand. But I think I can trust you. With them. With being present. With not leaving. That is enough. That is more than enough." She reached out and touched his hand. Just briefly. Contact that acknowledged connection without promising anything more. "Stay for coffee," she said. "After they are asleep. We should talk about what comes next." He stayed for coffee, and they talked until midnight about schedules and boundaries and the slow expansion of his role in their lives. Practical conversations that felt like building something. Planning a future that finally had room for him in it. When he left, the moon was high over the coastal town and the harbor lights reflected on water that had brought them back together after 5 years apart. He did not know what the future held. But for the first time, he believed it held something worth waiting for. The moment he had been waiting for arrived on an ordinary Saturday. The boys' birthday party filled the small backyard with children and chaos. He stood at the grill, flipping burgers, feeling more at home than he had felt anywhere in his entire adult life. The serious one managed the party games with military precision, organizing children into teams, explaining rules with detailed specificity, getting frustrated when participants did not follow the clearly outlined procedures. The friendly one moved between groups, making sure everyone felt included, inviting shy children to join activities, mediating disputes with natural diplomacy, being the social glue that held the celebration together. He watched them navigate their birthday with the skills they had developed over 7 years. Skills she had taught them. Character she had shaped. The evidence of her extraordinary parenting visible in everything they did. Then the friendly one called out from across the yard. "Dad, Dad." We need you for tug-of-war. Dad. The word landed in his chest like something sacred. Dad. Spoken casually. Naturally. As if it had always been his name. He looked toward the porch where she stood with her mother and sister. All three women watching him with expressions that said they had heard. That they understood the magnitude of what had just happened. She was crying. Wiping tears quickly. Smiling through them. He set down the spatula and walked toward his sons. The friendly one grabbed his hand immediately. Pulled him toward the rope where two teams were preparing for battle. You have to be fair to both sides, the friendly one instructed. Mom said. I will be fair, he promised. The tug-of-war lasted 20 minutes. Required 3 rematches. Ended with half the children covered in grass stains and laughing so hard they could barely stand. He was dirty and exhausted and happier than he had ever been. Later, after the guest had gone and the boys were asleep and the backyard was cleaned up, he stood with her in the kitchen, putting away leftover food. They called me Dad, he said. Both of them, she confirmed. For the first time. How do you feel about that? She stopped what she was doing. Looked at him directly. Relieved. Terrified. Hopeful. All at the same time. I understand the feeling. Do you? I have been waiting for that word for 3 years. And now that I have heard it, I am terrified of doing something that would make them take it back. She smiled slightly. That is the right way to feel. Parents should be terrified of disappointing their children. It keeps us trying harder. They finished cleaning in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that exists between people who have built something together. Who no longer need to fill every moment with words. When he prepared to leave, she stopped him at the door. I have been thinking, she said. About what? About what comes next. About whether we are building a co-parenting arrangement or something more. He waited. Not pushing. Not assuming. Letting her lead as he had learned to do. I thought I could never love you again, she continued. The betrayal was too deep. The damage too profound. Even after understanding that you were lied to as well, even after watching you prove yourself for 3 years, I thought the best I could hope for was peaceful coexistence. And now I am not sure. Something has shifted. Watching you become their father. Watching you earn what was stolen from you. Watching you stay when staying required patience and humility and accepting terms you had every right to resent. He stepped closer. Still not touching. But reducing the distance. What do you want to happen next? I want to try. Slowly. Carefully. Without disrupting what we have built for them. But I want to try. He reached out and took her hand. Not romantically, but as acknowledgement of connection. As acceptance of the chance she was offering. I would like to try too. At whatever pace feels safe for you. She looked at their joined hands. Then up at his face. You are different than you were. When we were married, you would have pushed. Would have wanted everything immediately. Would have seen my caution as rejection rather than protection. I have had 3 years to learn patience. And I have had 3 years to understand that moving slowly is not rejection. It is wisdom. She nodded. Come to dinner again next week. But earlier. Before the boys go to bed. Stay later. Let them see us spending time together in ways that are not just about them. Okay. And maybe sometime after that, if things continue going well, we could have dinner without them. Just the 2 of us. I would like that very much. She squeezed his hand once before letting go. Good night, she said. Good night. He walked to his car with the moon lighting his path and the knowledge that something new was beginning. Not a resurrection of what they had before. That was impossible. Too much had happened. Too much had changed. But something new. Built on harder foundations. Earned through years of proving instead of months of promising. The trying she had offered was not certainty. But it was hope. And hope was enough to build on. The wedding happened 2 years later. A small ceremony on the beach where he had first seen them frozen at the marina railing. The same harbor. The same salt wind. The same water reflecting light as the sun began its descent. But everything else was different. The boys stood beside him in matching suits that were slightly too big because she insisted they would grow into them. The serious one served as ring-bearer with the gravity of someone entrusted with precious cargo. The friendly one served as flower distributor, having lobbied extensively against the traditional title of flower girl. Her mother sat in the front row, crying before the ceremony even began. Her sister sat beside her, holding tissues for both of them. She walked down the aisle of sand alone. Not given away. Not escorted. Walking toward their family under her own power, as she had done everything for so many years. Her dress was vintage. Found at a shop in town. Simple and elegant and exactly what she wanted. He wore a suit he had worn before. The one from their first wedding. Finally altered to fit the man he had become instead of the boy he had been. The vows they exchanged were not traditional. She spoke about trust earned through consistency. About watching someone prove themselves daily until proof became pattern and pattern became faith. About the fear of trying again and the greater fear of not trying. He spoke about cowardice and courage. About choosing wrong and learning to choose right. About the family they had built from wreckage and the stubborn refusal to accept that broken things could not become beautiful. The serious one read a poem he had written for the occasion. His voice cracking only slightly on lines about finding family in unexpected places. About second chances and patience and the father who kept showing up until showing up became the whole point. The friendly one played a song on the guitar he had been learning for 2 years specifically for this moment. Simple and imperfect and absolutely joyful. About love that took the long way home. When they kissed, both boys cheered loudly enough to startle the seagulls. The reception was small. Family and close friends and the community that had become their village over the years. Dancing on sand as the sun set. The boys staying up past bedtime, drunk on joy and cake. Her mother pulled him aside at one point. "You did it," she said. "You stayed. I told you I would." Telling and doing are different things. Most people tell. You did. She hugged him for the first time since they had met. A brief embrace that acknowledged he had passed from outsider to family. Her sister approached next. "Hurt her again and I will destroy you," she said cheerfully. "Understood. Welcome to the family." Later, after the last guests had left and the boys had finally crashed, they stood at the water's edge looking out at the ocean that had saved her when everything else failed. "Was it worth it?" she asked. "All those years of proving yourself?" "Every single day. And I will keep proving it. Tomorrow and the next day and every day after." She leaned into him. The easy comfort of someone who had finally decided to trust fully. Good answer. They walked back to the house that had become home. The house where their sons slept in bunk beds. Where drawings covered the refrigerator and toys covered the floor and love filled every imperfect corner. He carried the serious one to bed. She carried the friendly one. They met in the hallway afterward, looking at each other with the knowledge of everything they had survived to reach this moment. "I love you," she said. And it was the first time she had spoken those words since their reunion began. "I love you too. I never stopped. I know. It just took me longer to get back there." They walked into their bedroom. Their life. Their future. And outside the window, the harbor lights reflected on water that had witnessed their destruction and their reconstruction. Some things break beyond repair. But some things break in ways that allow them to be rebuilt differently. Stronger. Harder. Earned. The family they had become was not the family they would have been without the 5 years of separation. Those years had shaped their sons in ways he would never fully understand. Had shaped her into someone harder and more resilient than she might have been. Had shaped him into someone patient enough to earn what he had failed to protect. They were different people now. The marriage they were beginning was not a continuation of the one that ended. It was something new. Built on foundations of proof instead of promise. Cemented with years of showing up instead of moments of declaring. This, he understood now, was what love actually looked like. Not the easy love of new romance. The hard love of redemption. The daily love of presence. The earned love that came from staying when leaving would have been easier. He fell asleep that night in a house full of people who trusted him. And for the first time in 8 years, he dreamed of nothing at all. Because finally, there was nothing missing. Nothing to search for. Nothing to prove. Only a family to cherish. And a lifetime to keep showing up. The morning light found them tangled together in the small bedroom of the coastal house. Outside, the harbor came to life with fishing boats heading out and seabirds calling and the ordinary magic of a world that kept turning regardless of human drama. Inside, two boys burst through the door demanding breakfast and asking if they could go to the beach and wanting to know if being married meant they would have pancakes every day now. He made pancakes while she made coffee while the boys argued about whose turn it was to choose the first activity of the day. The kitchen was chaos. Flour on the counter and syrup dripping and the friendly one attempting to flip a pancake with disastrous results. It was perfect. Everything he had ever wanted and almost lost and nearly gave up and finally earned. The serious one looked at him across the breakfast table. "Thanks for staying," he said. "It took a while, but you turned out okay." "High praise," he responded. "I will try to keep earning it." "Good plan." The friendly one demanded attention for a complicated story about a dream he had involving pirates and dinosaurs and a cake that could grant wishes. They listened. All four of them together around a table covered in breakfast remains and the evidence of family life lived in full. This was how it would be now. Mornings of chaos and evenings of calm. Homework and soccer games and bedtime stories. The ordinary moments that parents took for granted when they had always been there. The moments he would never take for granted because he knew how easily they could be lost. She reached across the table and took his hand while the boys argued about whether pirates or dinosaurs would win in a fair fight. "I am glad you found us," she said quietly. "I am glad you let me stay. It took a while. Some things take exactly as long as they need to." She smiled. He smiled back. And the coastal morning continued around them, full of light and possibility and the quiet certainty that some broken things could be made whole again. Not the same as before, but beautiful anyway. Perhaps more beautiful for having been broken. Perhaps stronger for having been rebuilt. Perhaps more precious for having been almost lost. The story of how they became a family would be told differently by each of them. She would tell it as a story of survival and rebuilding and learning to trust again. He would tell it as a story of failure and redemption and earning what could not be demanded. The serious one would tell it as a story of patience and testing and finally finding a father who understood that trust was earned through time rather than words. The friendly one would tell it as a story of love that took the long way around but got there eventually because love always finds a way when people keep showing up. All the versions were true. All the versions were the same story told from different angles. And all the versions ended here. In a coastal town that became home. In a family rebuilt from ruins. In a love that had been tested and broken and slowly, carefully, persistently made whole. This is Mr. Walker, reminding you that it is never too late to start proving yourself. Never too late to choose differently. Never too late for love to find its way home. If this story touched your heart, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me what lesson you are taking with you. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances. And subscribe to Tales of Desire with Mr. Walker for more stories that will break your heart and rebuild it again. Until next time, keep believing in love. Keep showing up. And remember that some broken things become the most beautiful things of all.